Trustee Look. Trustee Gamache. Trustee Jepson.
Here.
Trustee Meisner.
Here.
And chair's remarks, I have none. So we'll go to item number 4, which is to consider approving the minutes from the ACHRA board meeting of July 27th, 2023. It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it's approved. Item number 5 is ACHRA Management Committee report. Karen?
Mr. Chair, most of our items were informational. I can go through them very quickly for you. Our first informational item was that we will need to hold a special HRA board meeting on September 12th. During this time, we will conduct a public hearing, and it'll be related to amending our program year 23 action plan. Using up some of those unallocated dollars that we had to park temporarily in our homeowner rehab program, we now have uses for them, so we'll be moving those back out. But we do have to have the public hearing.
Very good. Any questions, comments? Anything else you want to go over? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to then item number 6, which is to consider amending lease agreement contract C 0006629 with Mediation Services located in the Blaine Human Services Center. The terms for 6 years through August 31st, 2029 at $10.11 per square foot with a 50-cent per square foot increase in rental every 2 years. After September 1st, 2029, the lease has an automatic 2-year renewal clause unless terminated. And we have Corey here to answer any questions and explain.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, trustees, my name is Corey Camp. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Anoka County. This is our Blaine Human Services Center. All our nonprofits, we have the same kind of rate structure that has been in place for a number of years. We go up every other year by 50 cents a square foot. This puts that in place and just continues the current path of where we've been. So.
Questions? Okay, hearing none.
Approval.
We got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote.
Trustee Reiner.
Aye.
Further discussion,
Oh, yes, further discussion. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention that this is Mediation Services, who was originally put together by Lonnie McCauley, and she oversaw it for a number of years. She recently passed, and I just wanted to publicly acknowledge not just that she put this together, but she was behind a lot of initiatives, both in Coon Rapids and countywide, and statewide for that matter. So a big loss to the community in the area, but she left a mark. She left a legacy, and so thanks, McCauley family, for that contribution. And those of you that remember that last name, her husband, David McCauley, was also a city councilman, a mayor in Coon Rapids, and a county commissioner here on the county board.
Thank you, Mr. Schulte. I appreciate the comments about Lonnie. Any other comments? Roll call vote.
Trustee Reiner.
Aye.
Trustee Schulte.
Aye.
Trustee Look.
Aye.
Trustee Gamache.
Aye.
Trustee Jepson.
Aye.
Trustee Meisner.
Aye.
Trustee Breasted.
Aye.
And it's approved. Item number 7, consider awarding lowest bidder, Schumacher Elevator Company, a contract to modernize the elevators at the Willows of Ham Lake and Savannah Oaks senior buildings. The bid amounts came in at $147,770 and $145,620 respectively, and will take approximately 12 days to complete. Karen, you want to give us an update on how that's all going to go?
Mr. Chair, trustees, this is a very careful project. We've got seniors living in those buildings, and there is just one elevator. So our goal was to get not only a great elevator company to come in and do the modernization, but also one that could do it quickly. The bids that we would like to accept today do have a premium price for expediting the project there's about a 10% increase in the total cost for the elevators to move the number of days from 19 days down to 12 days without being able to use them. I think this is very important when it comes to our seniors. I've talked to several of those of you who have a senior building in your district that is going to be undergoing this modernization. I think this is a very good use of the building funds. In addition, Great Lakes Management has done this before in other buildings. They are working with local service groups, the Boy Scouts, we'll have people available to carry groceries up and down and run things around the building for people. And if somebody has a mobility issue and lives on the second floor, we will have ways to get them downstairs. Police and fire have been notified, and we will coordinate very closely with everyone as we undertake these projects.
Thank you, Karen. Questions? Trustee Look.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, we kind of pride ourselves on trying to capture all the costs in these buildings as we can. Is this considered covered by our rental rates, or is this additional to, or how are we financing this?
Excellent question, Mr. Trustee. Each building has reserve and replacement accounts. First we look at building rents that could be used for ordinary maintenance. The size of a project does push us into our building and replacement program funds, but it is fully covered through the building operations and the funds that have been saved for that particular building.
Trustee Meisner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm just curious about the technical question, like for folks that do have mobility issues, the elevator's gonna be out of commission. I mean, do you put a temporary lift in the stairs, or are people physically carrying residents? Like, what does that look like?
Excellent question. We are still communicating with local police and fire. None of the buildings that Great Lakes has done in the past have required a temporary lift. Most people are able to get up and down the stairs with assistance.
Okay.
If that became necessary, or if we were alerted to it by a resident or a resident's family, it's something we would certainly consider.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion on this?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion or questions? I guess I do have something. This takes in just the two buildings. We have two others. Obviously, the one up in near Lake George is a newer building, so they're probably not in that situation. The other one, would they be getting close to needing something, or has that already been done?
Mr. Chair, excellent question. The Centerville project, the original project was a one-level building, no elevator. When we did Lake George, we did the second building in Centerville, so they will be on the same time schedule, and they'll be probably 10, 15 years down the line.
Okay. And is there anything about having two elevators? Does it require a certain height in the building for two elevators to be required to have, or is that why, because it's only 2 floors, that we don't need that?
Mr. Chair, I believe it's more based on the number of occupants of the building.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Trustee Schulte?
Aye.
Trustee Look?
Aye.
Trustee Gamache?
Aye.
Trustee Jepson?
Aye.
Trustee Meisner?
Aye.
Trustee Breasted?
Aye.
Trustee Reiner?
Aye.
Okay, and then we've got, it passes unanimously. Let's go back up to the top here quick. Okay, after item 7, this is when Corey had an issue that he wanted to bring to us.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, trustees. Last month, you approved a lease agreement over at the 2150 building with Bolt Law Firm. That had an effective date of August 1st. Right now, they have requested if the effective date could move to October 1st. The build-out is not able to begin until September 18th. Facilities is coordinating that. They will pay for their portion of the build-out, which is already kind of set up, and there we will have an addendum. But they cannot occupy the new space that this lease kind of, puts on them until at least like October. And so they've just asked to do that, and so I'm just bringing the request forward. I was notified of this just like last week, at the end of the week. So if that be fine, it doesn't really change any other terms. It's really not a bother to us. It changes, the end date would flow just like the effective date, so it wouldn't change any terms.
Okay, Trustee Schulte?
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we change the effective date to October 1st, 2023.
Do you have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Trustee Look.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, did we miss this or did they miss this?
You know, we put this out to them. They didn't get back to me until that time. That's kind of how it works with them. So,
So Corey, there's no financial issues here, that everything is just moving the date.
yep, just moving a date.
Okay, any other discussion? Oh, trustee Look?
Sure, there would be financial, right? Because we would be less that amount for those months.
For the first 2 months, yes, but then we have 2 months on the backside.
Right.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And this needs to be a roll call vote, I believe. Okay, roll call. If there's no other discussion, questions, roll call vote.
Trustee Look,
Abstain.
Trustee Gamache,
Aye.
Trustee Jepson,
Aye.
Trustee Meisner,
Aye.
Trustee Breasted,
Aye.
Trustee Reinert,
Aye.
Trustee Schulte.
It passed with one abstention. And that concludes this part. We have an additional item before us, if everybody has that. What this is regarding, consider approving Stepping Stone Emergency Housing to renovate the basement of the Cronin Building, including kitchen, cafeteria, lighting, et cetera, contingent upon receipt of grant funds. And we've got some information here on the back, take a look at, but I'll turn it over to Karen.
Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to Corey and our county administrator.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We also have Andrew Dykstra, who can also answer additional questions. I was contacted by Steve Griffiths, who is the Executive Director of Stepping Stone Emergency Housing. The state of Minnesota has $98 million available, 40% of which needs to go to outstate Minnesota. It can be utilized for renovation or expansion of essentially homeless shelters. And with the renovation, there's not a match requirement, is our understanding. So basically, what they're asking for is that the kitchen facilities right now really don't meet their needs, the cafeteria areas, and some of the downstairs lighting. So what they would like to do is contingent upon the receipt of the grant funding, they would like the ability to remodel that space to meet their needs moving forward. So in order to apply for the grant, they really wanted to make sure that they didn't put in the work of putting an application together without some sort of approval from the Board of Trustees. So that's what they're requesting, is basically so that they can fill out the grant application, submit it in September by the deadline, and then wait to hear. And they're not asking for any financial commitment or anything from the county.
Trustee Look?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I can definitely support this. But it does kind of give me just a little bit of deja vu on the last project that they had going here. And so I want to make absolutely certain that in the absence of getting these grant funds, that it's not a request to the county at that point to find a pot of money somewhere or whatever the case is to make this happen. This is fully 100% on them, their issue, this is what was communicated.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Look, yes, they would not move forward with doing remodeling without receipt of the grant funds or other funds that were available. In fact, Steve specifically mentioned if they did not get enough grant funds to cover everything that they want to do, they will cut back on the project and just do the highest priority items. One thing to be aware of, and we will need to take a look at the lease to ensure that this is included, but there's a couple of items. With receipt of those funds, they would have to have a lease that is in place 5 years after the project completion. And then the lease we would need to look at the lease to make sure that it allows for the proposed renovation. But those would be the two items, and we need to take a look into that.
Trustee Schulte?
And Mr. Chair, the majority of my question was answered there, but I just was verifying that this space is already all in the lease. It's just a matter of convincing or making sure the state of Minnesota knows that we're approving of them doing this upgrade and that the lease would then be modified to match the needs of the grant. As long as it's, no further expense to the county, I'm in support of this.
Any other questions? Does this need, oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Jepson.
Yeah, thank you. So it's very clear in the comments here that anything outside of the funded project would get removed from the list of wants and needs. I just want to remind the board that the additions for the last renovation, there were some things added to that project that was not Stepping Stone's desire, but the county's desire. So that's why things got a little wonky with that grant and those funds. This is absolutely not the case here at all, unless the county at some point desires to have something added to the project that Stepping Stone didn't think of in the past. So I do want to remind folks historically, from my knowledge and those who were around previously, the reason why there was not a stove, a hood, ventilation, was that that provides more of a permanent function for that space, where the current appliances, the current equipment, can be removed and the space can just be a room. The work that they're wanting to do will change that space pretty much permanently. So I just want to bring that to everyone's attention so that if they get the money, if we say go ahead, then we don't say, whoa, 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 hold on. If you put venting in there, if you put a walk-in refrigerator in there, that's gonna be pretty much impossible to remove and replace and repair without some serious expense to the county. So I just wanna get that all transparent. I think having the work that they're needing to support the residents that are there. The request is not, it's a rational request. It's a logical request, and it is much needed improvements for that space. So I absolutely support this. I just want everyone to go in at this eyes wide open.
Trustee Look.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as our lease is concerned, we probably have it written in there that the space has to be returned to the way it was originally from modifications, I'm assuming. Everything can be torn out. I mean, I'm looking at Andrew thinking, we can tear anything out. But the issue is not whether it should fall on us to tear it out if they vacate the spot. It should probably fall on them to return the space to the way it was originally set up.
Rhonda.
Mr. Chairman, just to address that, we will actually need to go back and look in brief consultation with our attorney. She indicated she does not believe that it is written that way in the lease, but we will go back and check.
Trustee Jepson, you have a question?
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea, but also if we approve the changes, that adds a little complication. If the wording says that they will bring it back to the original, I mean, that's gonna be pretty hard to do, especially with the tunnel work that's gonna be done. I mean, there's a lot of changes that have happened in that place, including county-initiated changes, so I don't know how it would ever get back to its original form.
Trustee Look.
Mr. Chair, I guess let me just be on record then that, that we can certainly approve some of these things and certainly try and help them in their pursuit of these dollars. But if they were to vacate the spot at some point and leave us holding a bag at that point, I will draw on the similarity of the tunnels that we inherited and the problem, the bag we're holding there, which is $10 million, let's say. Not something I want to get into ever probably again. So certainly we want to encourage them to meet whatever needs they have. If they're modifying the space in such a way and plan on leaving tomorrow, for example, which I don't believe they are, but if they were, and they leave us holding a bag at that point, it's something I'm not interested in getting into.
Trustee Meisner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just and thank you, by the way, for bringing this or highlighting the specifics about this. I want to go back to one of your original comments just to make sure that I understand. So they're improving, they're putting some permanent equipment in there. When it needs repair, is that the county's responsibility? No, that's their responsibility. Okay, so it's just if they vacate. Got it, thank you.
Trustee Reiner.
Yeah, so In my business career, I've signed 30 to 40 leases as I'm sitting here thinking about it, and never once was that a condition of signing the leases that you return it to its original condition. Not once. It's not typical.
Trustee Jepson.
Yeah, thank you. And to Trustee Look's point, from the previous grant given by the state, and I would assume, I could be wrong, from this future grant that they're going to apply for, if Stepping Stone leaves the project before the lease is up, they are responsible for repaying the original dollar amount given to them. So not only would Stepping Stone be, not only would, as
5 years.
right. So, I mean, that's a lot of money to walk away from and have to repay in the event that tomorrow they just leave. So it's
Let's
not.
call tomorrow 6 years.
Okay.
Well, as Rhonda indicated, they are having the discussion with the county attorney's office to find out exactly what's in the current lease, and then we'll have some more information. Karen?
Mr. Chair, trustees, I have read the RFP, and there is a question that Stepping Stone will need to answer, and it deals with if you are leasing this space and you do not continue to operate 5 years after the end of the grant, what will you do to make sure that the improvements are relevant and can be reused?
And that's in the RFP.
It's in the RFP. They will have to answer that question.
Andrew, I'm sorry. Trustee Brasted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, do we know if their Stepping Stone board has approved this, so we don't end up in a similar situation that we were in before?
Mr. Chair, Trustee Brasted, I will follow up and ask him for a copy of minutes showing that they have approved it. I think that they've had discussion with their board. I'm not sure if they've actually approved it, but they also wanted to make sure that you were supportive before they actually move forward with applying for a grant that they could potentially receive and then not be able to use.
And Trustee Brasted.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, some of the leases that I have been involved in, there is a clause that the condition of the space be put back. So I do think that is a good concern that Commissioner Look brought up.
And Trustee Reiner, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've never seen that language in any of the leases that I've signed. You have to leave the space in, a presentable condition, but you don't have to return it to the original, which would actually be a little ridiculous because most of the time when someone goes in, they improve the space. And then the landlord gets to get the benefit of those improvements. And then if somebody comes in and those improvements are not suitable for their operation, then they change it, but then the cost of those changes is usually on the tenant.
I have Trustee Look and then Trustee Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, so when answering this question, would one of the logical responses be that they would have to remove this equipment and use it somewhere else, wherever they're going, or whatever the case is? Would that be a logical response to a question like that?
Mr. Chair, that would be one of the logical responses to
Okay.
that question. Another would be that the lease requires it to be removed.
Okay, so in the event that it is removed, either by lease or by their personal decision, they leave gaping holes in this facility now. That would then require us to come in, Andrew, and your team to try and change that back to a facility now that can be used for some other purpose, right? A purpose more closely aligned to what is currently being used for prior to those modifications. So there's a potential cost there that I'm trying to avoid here. Trying to pull out my crystal ball, which isn't any better than anyone else's, and trying to look 20 years down the line and say, what are we going to be looking at here with what sort of modifications are being presented? Something that I don't necessarily want to account for or be responsible for, identical to the tunnels that we're dealing with today. I have a little heartburn over the tunnels if we haven't picked up on that. Anyways.
Trustee Jepson, then Trustee Reiner.
Yeah, I think if, a couple of things. to Trustee Look's comments, I think if my assumption would be if they were to leave, they would be done. And so they wouldn't take any equipment, they wouldn't take anything with them. So you would be left with an improvement to your asset. Of course, that's just an assumption. But Trustee Brosted, you said something about the board of directors and what happened previously. What was that alluding to?
So we were, Mr. Chair, thank you. So the last situation that we were involved in, we were told early on that the board had approved, the Stepping Stone board had approved a grant request and a proposal. And then later when we met with, and correct me those that were in attendance if this is not accurate, but then afterwards there was a follow-up meeting with, I believe, the chair of that board and another board member, and we were told that the board had not given the approval to make the request. So we were told two different things, very clearly two different things. So I just want to make sure we don't go down that path again.
Trustee Reiner.
Yeah, I just, more on this, how you leave the condition of the space and everything. Typically what happens when somebody moves out, they move out. They leave it in presentable condition. The landlord doesn't usually come in and then spend money prior to new people coming in and looking at the space, because if you spend money in improving it or fixing it or doing something, more times than not, you're going to have a tenant come in and say, well, you did all that and you spent all that money, but I'm going to change it now. And so it's kind of a waste of money to go in and improve a space after somebody's vacated, and that's not typical in how it usually is worked. I mean, you usually look at a space, imagine it to be what you want, and then you rent it and make improvements. It's a waste of money for the landlord to spend money cleaning up after a tenant moves, and typically is not done that way.
And it seems to me that with what we have already put in and what's already been done at Stepping Stone with the second floor, which, by the way, looks great, that has already changed perhaps where this building would ever go anyways. And now this addition to make a real kitchen would obviously make it very valuable to Stepping Stone, a place where they probably will not leave should something terrible happen and they lose their funding or whatever might happen. But they're looking at a long-term lease now, probably because of the amount of time and money they're putting into this, and now this facility will help them serve the people that they're serving even further into the future. But it's also a value to that building, and that building's going to be more valuable than it is today. So I don't think we're going to have that issue to worry about. Yes, the county attorney.
Chair, I just wanted to put a little context around the fixture suggestion too, that we do usually draft our leases with fixtures remaining, and that the personal property and some of the tenant improvements that are movable would come out. However, things can be negotiated. And also the other thing we would look at and be able to present options would be whether the equipment is encumbered if, for instance, the grant of there's a useful life to that. So it honestly would, in some cases when we use federal money, the equipment remains under that. So we could look at funding sources and look at options and present those as well, once our office looks at the lease, sees what it says right now.
So we're not looking to do anything at this point in time. Don't we need some, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rhonda.
Mr. Chair, due to the fact that the application is due towards the end of September, they are looking for some clear direction from this Board of Trustees to basically say, yes, go ahead and apply, and that you would support their ability to renovate the basement.
Mr. Chair.
Trustee Schulte.
I would make a motion that we endorse their application with the idea that they will come back to us to update the lease, because the lease can't stand as it is. It'll need to be extended, and we can have further conversations. I don't think there's any thought that we would change rates, but it's necessary to get them back to the table. So I would make a motion that we do endorse their application with the idea that they come back for lease conversations.
Second.
It's been moved to second. Discussion? Does this require a roll call, or we can do, it shouldn't? Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it's approved unanimously. Thank you. And I believe, Karen, that is all we have. And thank you, Andrew, for being there. And we're adjourned. Railroad.